We have a very exciting panel. I'm very, very interested in this one. I'm going to come around from backstage and listen at the back there. We are going to be talking about NFTs meet DeFi, two of the hottest subjects in the crypto and blockchain space. And we have three very special guests, and the moderator for this panel is Alexandra Kahn. So please welcome Alexandra and the panel to the stage. You're all up. You're all up.
GM.
Hi.
Test. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, guys and girls. I'm sorry. Let's start with a quick introduction round. Maybe we can start right here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joe. I am the founder and product lead over at NFT Perp. NFT Perp is a decentralized perpetual futures exchange for NFTs, allowing people to long and short the floor price of NFT collections.
Hey guys, Ben Lakoff, co-founder, business lead at Charged Particles, so enabling composability within NFTs.
Hello everyone, Hako Otol here. We built a layer 2 back in 2018, Nami, and we're currently pretty much focused on the ecosystem build on top of it.
Awesome, thank you guys. Maybe we can start with talking about utility of NFTs and DeFi in general. What are the main subjects we are talking about?
Sure. Utility in NFTs for DeFi?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I guess it's a bit early stages in how NFTs can be used in a way that makes sense within DeFi. I mean, long term, like NFTs and DeFi will be like combined in new, unique ways and much more. But like right now, it's kind of early stages, people experimenting around. Maybe it gives you access, or it's some sort of like identity play. It proves that you're somebody within the community and you get access that somebody else doesn't. But yeah, I'd say just in general, it's very, very early stages on how NFTs can provide much more utility within DeFi itself.
From what I see, the utility of NFTs as of now that's being mostly very widely adopted is probably Uniswap v3. Whenever you provide liquidity on Uniswap v3, because it's not all, when Uniswap v2, when you deposit tokens into a pool, you get LP tokens, v2 version, represents your share in that pool. Which is equal 50-50, but after they introduced concentrated liquidity on Uniswap, each position when you provide liquidity is represented through an NFT because it's very unique with different strategies. So it becomes a pretty strong, interesting position if these NFTs can be traded, if you have different strategies on how you deploy capital and provide liquidity on Uniswap, for example. And then outside of that, I guess, a lot of NFTs are being used right now for lending and borrowing, right? If you have Bored Apes, they're worth a lot of money. You want to keep your NFT, but access to liquidity, you can lend it out and borrow against it and use that money to bet on something else. Yeah, I think that's kind of the extent of NFTs being used in DeFi as we speak. And then like you have Nouns DAO, for example, right? It's using these NFTs through auction, continuing raising money for this DAO that can do whatever they want. And an NFT represents this DAO ownership, this DAO governance. So there's different representation of how NFTs are being used in DeFi ecosystem and continue to grow over time.
So I think it's going to be definitely a process which most likely is going to be accelerated now due to the current market conditions. Historically, of course, NFT started as a as a rough concept of what it could look like 4, 5, 6 years ago. Then we saw the evolution that happened last year because of well-known NFT collections. And yes, Uniswap, for instance, introduced maybe in a very subtle way the use of NFT. So every time you deposit it into LP, you would be getting an NFT in return. People at the beginning didn't really see the point of it. Those were one of the first comments I came across, or that I recall. But clearly, the non-fungibility aspect of it opens up many opportunities. Now, my assumption is that we will see experimentation taking place on DeFi, but we will probably see a maturity coming from more traditional finance platforms adopting an initial version of what DeFi could look like, and therefore applying that utility to the NFTs. Now, in terms of how it's going to look like, nobody knows that, of course. But history again tells us that crypto is the playground where things get experimented and definitely get broken, as we have seen today, or yesterday, and the last couple of weeks. But ultimately, the sweet spot most likely will be introduced by those better established players that have got less room for maneuvering and breaking things, and instead are better educated in terms of what their customers want, and therefore they will apply that level of utility that will be maybe not very revolutionary from a crypto point of view, but it might be very revolutionary from general adoption and commercial adoption point of view.
Yeah, and I think maybe I get rid of this and get an actual mic. I think it will be very difficult whenever I'm about to. I don't lift it up. If somebody could grab a real mic and turn this one off. But I think it will be clunky at first, right? Like you said with Uniswap v3, everything in DeFi was set up for v2 tokens, which are ERC20 tokens, and then you suddenly jam an NFT in it, and it's like, holy crap. This is a unique position that makes sense. It needs to have a unique token, like an NFT associated with it, but like that really shakes the foundation and all these things that DeFi, like 1.5 or whatever, was built on. Yeah, so I think it will be clunky, but it is important that like crypto is this wild sandbox of innovation, and we'll continue to throw different things at it until you kind of come out with a more effective, more efficient model in the end, which might or might not include NFTs in like a very seamless manner, but it certainly will be bumps in the road to get there, that's for sure.
Awesome, thank you so much. I was thinking about NFTs as passwords, just to have mass adoption around the corner, to make it more easy to access the space maybe, because I'm a DeFi user and I need to have like 2 million passwords in my mind, 2 million wallets, 2 million platforms. Where did I do what? I don't have no clue at this point. It's just luck if I find my money back. And maybe this is something that could trigger adoption way faster. What do you think?
NFT as passwords?
Yeah, or just like a user, like you have your avatar and you just enter DeFi like your avatar, where everything is coming together maybe to make it more easy, more accessible.
I mean, there are projects tackling NFT as identity. So you would tie your either biometric data, or it could be your personal information, KYC information stored in an off-chain secured environment server, and have your metadata in this NFT tied to you that's non-transferable in your wallet that represents your identity, and that will point towards an off-chain server where the KYC provider companies offer that solution. If certain key and authorizations is approved by the user, say you can access this, and that will represent your quote-unquote identity in the Web3 or metaverse, whatever you call it. But that's kind of the extent of how an NFT could be applied, in my opinion. Like, you still have the physical world accessing Web 2, Web 3 initial step, and for you to do that, to authenticate who you are and how it ties to you, like there's still birthday, name, pet name that need to be involved in that first step to access it, right?
Yeah, I think that NFTs as access tokens is like a great use case. So that could be kind of considered a password. But I mean, like ultimately the killer use case with a lot of NFTs was like this virtual flex. You get to prove that you have X money in your wallet because you bought this super expensive thing that gets you access into this part of the chat group that you know, it's like the inner circle or whatever. So I think as access, this is a huge thing, right? If I'm an influencer or whatever, and I have a bunch of followers, I can engage with them in different ways by giving them different tiers access within. You know, you get a Zoom call with this NFT every month, or you get inside this chat group with this NFT, and then it all plays into identity eventually because you get these little kind of breadcrumbs of who you are and what you're interested in, this vibrant social graph of what it could be. And that definitely all kind of fits into that password thesis, I'd say.
That's a very interesting point that you have all brought up. Of course, if you look at the essence of crypto, is self-custody, self-identity, right? The question is how much you want to expose that and in which form, because we have seen as well what are the drawbacks of such a play. Now, while we were backstage, some of the guys that we work with, which applies back to what you guys have mentioned, they are a Web2 company. They offer a remote collaboration tool. Think about it as a Web2 or a two-dimensional virtual world where you can have your little own avatar, and then you have a virtual office, right? And then you can quickly interact with people. You can move your avatar to somebody else, and then the video conference opens up. So they have announced that they are shifting towards the metaverse, offering metaverse as a service. And the first project that they're doing is you can basically buy an NFT, which is your avatar, which will represent your persona in this virtual world. So you will start building up that digital identity, right? So clearly, I mean, and this just happened 5 minutes ago. So clearly there are applications that are moving that way. The good news is that these guys, they have currently a successful business. They have over 100 customers, and they have seen an opportunity. Now, the question is, how quickly is this going to mature until the point where we all feel comfortable having a visible identity on the blockchain representing a lot of who we are, right? And none of us are safe from phishing scams and things like that. So, as I think it was Spider-Man's uncle said, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So if you have access to your entire digital life in the crypto wallet, you better know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. So unfortunately, I guess that we will see quite a bit of problems, mistakes that will happen, right? But again, we will iterate, as you indicated, this is a perfect sandbox. I mean, it is better to be on a sandbox where the value that you can lose is zero instead of a $2 trillion market cap, right? Where that sandbox suddenly becomes a big problem for many people, for a lot of people. So.
I think in terms of like NFT identity, maybe 30 years from now or 50 years from now, how I envision our daily life would be, you can go as far as saying each person could have an NFT as identity built into your passport, your national ID, and that keeps your record of your medical records, your crime records, your social credit score, your financial statements. Everything is trackable, and you can put this is crazy, but if you take a vaccine, you can have a microchip. That essentially is your NFT. But jokes aside, the potential of that is very, very, the sky's the ceiling, right? I think there's a lot that can be developed in this space. At the meantime, figuring out how to navigate with privacy issues, security issues. If someone pointed a gun to your head, do you still have access to your wallet with your thumb? How do you navigate around that? So I think as we go towards that ultimate model, what it could look like, there's a lot of hurdles in between that you have to solve, and whether that is government subsidies, companies that are doing that, or private companies doing that. I think it'll be a challenge, but that's where innovations comes in. Yeah.
One last thing, I will say that I agree. In fact, all the building blocks are there, right? So verifiable credentials, zero knowledge proofs, all those items are there available for us. The question is, how can we mix them? Like for instance, with COVID and COVID passports. So we have all experienced traveling after COVID, and then you need to give away too much information to those third parties, right? Like for instance, when you got vaccinated, what vaccine was given to you and so forth. I personally don't feel very comfortable giving that away, but you can make use of specific cryptographic technology to give away only the answer to the question. And the question is, can you board a plane? And the only thing that the other party should know is yes or no. They don't need to know the reason why yes or the reason why no, right? So absolutely we could make use of that today, but still the question comes down to how are you going to standardize in a safe way the protection of that data? Because yes, losing $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 hurts, but you can recover from that, hopefully. With that said, losing your entire identity is a different story, right?
Definitely, we can agree on that. I was thinking about inheritance. When it comes to NFTs and identity, I could just give my whole DeFi identity via an NFT to my child. And this idea makes me really happy because I know it's so hard to track what am I doing in DeFi. It's even harder to track for your children, for anyone who's taking over after you're dead. Maybe this is a use case as well, just to hand it over as an NFT. Here, have fun with whatever I did there. Lost in the chaos I produced, have fun.
Well, yeah, I think all of us here, maybe a lot of us would echo to what I'm saying now. If I get hit by the bus tomorrow, can my family members or my loved ones access my funds? Or is it all gonna just die, and essentially disappear with me? Quadriga co-founder, Gabriel, that supposedly died in India and took $400 million with him. So I think and the panel before us, DeFi Security, talked about this earlier, like the notion of this is your access to the private key and this is the access to the wallet. If you lose this, you lose everything. That itself, as an infrastructure for the industry, is extremely vulnerable, and that's just tough, right? So how do we have good security operation like SOP for ourselves as people that have significant funding, of our portfolio in crypto? How do we get access to our family members in a secure way, that they won't just run away with your money, but also making sure they can have access to your funds when something happens to you? I think this is something that maybe Charged Particles has something pretty interesting, because they're building an NFT that allows you to have assets held in that NFT. So maybe I'll let you kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, trust accounts is something that we kind of enable, but again, it's like an imperfect solution, right? So you have the ability to take your NFT, fill it full of whatever DeFi portfolio or assets or other non-fungible tokens, all containerized within that NFT, but then somebody needs to custody that NFT, so there needs to be some sort of dead man switch or whatever to solve some of these issues. But it certainly could enable ease of transferability, but you would still need to obviously have access to your wallet and not be dead to transfer that. There's some other projects that are working on like a dead man switch that is way beyond like the scope of this conversation with NFTs and DeFi. But I think it could serve as like the vessel or the container for ease of transfer. But again, it's like very imperfect solution for it solves a very unique problem, which is transferability, all these different assets, and doesn't address a lot of the other ones.
So elaborating on what you mentioned before, and you as well, I think that this is really an educational problem more than anything else. I'm sure everybody in this room who has introduced family members or friends into crypto, you have gone through the process of discussing and presenting what is a hot wallet, what is a cold wallet, why those words can never ever be present in a digital form. They think that either you're crazy or you don't know what you're talking about, or it is problematic, right? So of course you can have the best OPSEC features in your workflow to make sure that you avoid all problems, but still it is a transition, it is an education process. It is not sexy, it's not fun. You cannot really fast forward 5 years, so there's no flux capacitor who can help us to do that. And what is even worse for the maxis in the room is when you have to be the party pooper and say that maybe some kind of trusted, and I hate saying the word, trusted third party, centralized third party that you can rely on for a period of time might be a way to go as a hybrid solution. And as I said, it kind of, I know it sounds like it defeats the purpose, but who wants to risk everything?
I think there's probably smart contracts can be created for it, and programs can be created for it. For example, you could create smart contracts that store your funds, that if the smart contract isn't touched or being called in over 6 months, it automatically transfers all the assets into a separate wallet. That could be your backup wallet, it could be your fiance's or your boyfriend or your kid's wallet that's previously designated and also pre-assigned of token approval of spend and pre-spend on gas fees. So there are things around that you could do that, but I don't think there are companies that are tackling this problem just yet.
I agree. Again, most of the building blocks exist from a technological point of view. The point I was trying to make before was that it's not so much about the technology, it's more about the educational part of it. You can gamify things, you can add game theory to it, all those things are fine, but ultimately you have over 7 billion people on the planet. They know nothing about this technology and about why you need to have a different approach towards controlling and managing those funds that you have self-custody for. So it is complicated, but we'll get there.
Awesome. Okay, I was thinking about maybe liquidity, because we see a lot of tokenized assets nowadays, like tokenized moon, tokenized real estate. What if this is entering DeFi and we can trade it ASAP, like within a second? This would be huge.
Right. So now this is when it gets really interesting, right? So quite a bit of the work that we have been doing these last few months has been around specific physical use cases that could be digitalized in a way that in some cases will have to be compliant, unfortunately, but still you can benefit from it. And most importantly, you can create value for those third-party individuals. And then is when we have been discussing internally about how can you turn an illiquid asset into liquid asset, thanks to making use of NFTs and DeFi, right? Now, as soon as you start exploring that question, then you realize that there are trillions of dollars of illiquid assets that could quickly benefit from it. But yet, again, it will require a very careful approach towards it, depending on what illiquid assets you would like, or physical assets you would like to turn into liquid assets. Then you will have to go different routes, meaning it's not the same, a Picasso, a $25 million Picasso than a house, because the Picasso is not regulated at the end of the day. Well, the house, depending on the country, they will have harder regulations to go through. Some countries will be more open-minded than others, and so forth. But personally, that is where I think it really gets very interesting very, very quickly.
Yeah, and I think whenever we think of liquidity within DeFi, it's very different to, it's very difficult to apply whatever is being used on DeFi with fungible, interchangeable tokens to something within DeFi, which everything is has a aspect of non-fungibility and uniqueness. So, I mean, there's markets that exist with lower liquidity, and you just you add in a liquidity premium for those assets that are more liquid. But I think the key is that those building blocks that we've built around DeFi, you can't just copy paste and change from fungible to non-fungible. It doesn't work like that. So we'll again, like, all of this is very early stages, right? I mean, all of this money tied up in non-fungible tokens, whatever category they are, art, in-game assets, financial products, tickets, all of these things are non-fungible tokens, and they'll all have different strategies to enable more liquidity for each of those, and then sub-strategies within each of those categories for Bored Apes, for example, different than some other type of like lower interest NFT related to art.
Yeah. So when it comes to liquidity, that NFT markets suffers because of the fungibility. The non-fungibility makes it harder to enter and exit because of however the order book is too thin on OpenSea, whatever you call it. There are projects that are solving this problem. If you guys haven't seen it yet, check out NFTX. It's essentially fractionalizing an NFT and turning it into an ERC20 supplied of it that could be claimed if you bought enough to take this back from the vault. So there is fractionalized ownership of NFTs available in the market. Turn it, NFT liquidity, put it on SushiSwap and make an AMM out of it. So if you want to exit your NFT quickly, you can just take it into a vault, mint it, turn it into an ERC20 version of it, and then sell it on open market. So there's ways around it, and they're also building on top of this. There's a project called FloorDAO, which is an Olympus DAO model of incentivizing people to thicken the book of a liquidity floor by good Ponzi-nomics, and that's pretty interesting, right? So I think there's different ways to tackle around the issue of liquidity with NFT collections. If you put it in a vault and have ERC20 to represent ownership of that, which makes non-fungible tokens fungible.
Yeah, but I think all of these are imperfect, very early stage solutions to it. And ultimately, I don't think that all non-fungible assets need this infinite, super deep, always 24/7, 365 liquidity order books. So it's going to be, I mean, the fact that these things are digital applies for much ease of liquidity and transferability already. I mean, fractionalization has been around for a long time, but in a trustless way, and these tokens are freely traded, and you can incentivize liquidity around them. These are all kind of the newer things that crypto allows to happen, partially because it's like more in an unregulated area, and that's a highly regulated topic. But these are all early stages, and they'll continue to evolve. But ultimately, I don't think that you need super deep liquidity on all of these things, and we'll come to like some happy medium of these. Ultimately, more liquidity comes from more interest and more people coming into the NFT markets and ease of access. So that leads into UI, UX, and ease of use for a number of new members into the NFT market. But that's like the real secret sauce of how we get more liquid markets. We just need more people knowing, owning, wanting to own NFTs, and the rest will kind of work itself out.
Awesome. What else can we fractionize and trade via DeFi? What is happening? And I'm always wondering, how could that change society, how we approach certain assets or goods?
I believe that everything could be, theoretically speaking, fractionalized or NFT'd, right? Keep in mind that, for example, what the famous or infamous investment banks have been doing for years. They have been creating new products out of thin air without really commercial utility, right? Or general utility. It was mostly geared for them. We, on the other hand, can make use of DeFi NFTs to create value for those third parties. But ultimately as well, the moment that you move away from the exclusively digital side of things and move also into the physical side of things, you will require the third-party support from other organizations or regulations. Again, this is a little bit picking up from the previous comment, right? So we have, for instance, been speaking to a fair amount of third-party organizations that are currently exploring that as well, because what DeFi has taught the world these last couple of years is that has gone from an idea to an experiment to a successful experiment. It went from nothing to $200 billion, fully TVL. So then institutions have thought, oh, okay, so actually I could potentially make use of that. Plus, institutions have been receiving a fair amount of pressure from third party onto them saying, hey, I also want to be part of this DeFi thing because I've got $100 million, I'm one of your best customers. You're giving me pretty much nothing in return, and I want to make this 8, 5, 15, 20% APY. So then is when institutions go like, oh, wait a minute. So it's not just me thinking that blockchain or DeFi or NFTs are cool, but my customers are telling me I've got to do something about it, which means I need to get moving. Then is when they go like, okay, what do we have? So we have $100 billion of illiquid assets, for instance, and we have these protocols that exist by which we can extract these 2 or 3 lessons learned and we can apply it and create this other product, right? But again, what they very soon face, those third parties, is regulation or compliance, right? So again, my take is that you could apply this technology, this idea, to pretty much all kind of assets, just depending on how and when you want to do it. You will require making use of some of the old legacy world.
I think when we talk about like fractionalized ownership and NFTs, how it apply to the physical world, the natural verticals people think about would be art pieces or like real estate, right? Can you turn a property into an NFT, fractionalize it, and let people to own it? And is that a security? How do you deal with all of that? I think the idea of DeFi, like why we're so excited about DeFi, is you remove that middleman, right? That trusted party that's supposed to handle your money, give you loans, which is a bank, right? They take money from people, promise a very, very shitty interest rate, and then lend it out with high interest rate. That's how they earn money. So can we remove that with DeFi? We've done that. Now, how do we remove the trusted system where if these supposed NFT fractionalized ERC20 version of ownership of an NFT represents a property, how do you govern the actual ownership of the property? Like who's doing that, right? Do you need to trust a company that's using a bank to have ownership over that or buy interest, based on that? So can we use a DAO that manage that NFT? And when you have a DAO that represents an ownership of an LLC that owns properties, theoretically you could have ERC20 tokens represents ownership of a DAO that represents ownership of a property group that represents NFTs ownership, and fractionalize them into other ways to do it. So I think there's ways around it, and it's getting more and more interesting as more decentralized model of finance, decentralized model of organizations come out, decentralized model of ownership comes out. I think everything is that we hoped for when crypto started out is starting to come to place as these bull runs come in, because more ideas are coming out, they're getting funded, more problems are being solved. So I think it'll take some time, but we'll get in there.
Nice, thank you. The next point would have been like, what are we going to do with the DAOs? Because I think that's a nice thing, to remove even the last point of middleman. Like, we can't just cut out everyone then and just be super sovereign on this. And maybe we can even take this further and further. What could be like DAO 2.0 in DeFi?
So I'm very opinionated about DAOs because when you join DAOs, it's all fun until 99% of the DAO members are free riders and only 2%, 1% are doing the work. And the rest are just kind of, not doing shit, putting in money and expect returns. That's essentially, joining a group project at school and not doing anything and just expect to get an A, right? I think DAOs that represents ownership is getting more and more mature with the way of how each members are being rewarded based on contributions. So if you want to be a part of a DAO, how do you gate the access to the DAO? Like, can anyone join a DAO, or do you join a DAO because you have potential contribution, you have time, you can actually contribute, and therefore get rewards out of it? And how do you measure all that? It's tough, but we're getting there.
I was laughing, and good thing that you guys couldn't hear me, because I agree with you in full. So a couple of months ago, we announced a DAO, right? Because as mentioned, we built a layer 2, now we have built a second version. With the first one, I don't know, we moved about $500 million in payments. The second version is EVM compatible, blah, blah, blah. Now we're building the ecosystem. And we have announced basically a DAO, which is an incubator, to build products on top of it. Now, we have absolute zero intention to give away control of the DAO anytime soon. Because, as you indicated, people likes to do nothing and get paid for it. And that just doesn't go very well with us. So we will, at some point, give away control of it. But history has taught us that every boat needs a captain. Life is not fair, right? In every team you have the Pareto rule. 20% of the guys will do 80% of the job, right? When there's money involved, that 20%, 80% becomes even more radical, because people want to maximize their opportunity doing fuck all and getting a lot out of it. So yeah, it is complicated, to say the least. But ultimately, what you need is a solid group of individuals that are absolute believers of what you're doing. You show the intention, you show the path, and then hopefully the guys coming after you will have the same, true values, right? But it is complicated. I mean, DAOs, in the way they are, it's just most of them will fail because that exact same reason.
Yeah, and it's an important part, right? There's this concept of progressive decentralization that's very important, because you have to have that centralized but captain of the ship kind of directing control, or you just have a giant crowd of people all with voting weight kind of saying which way they want it to go. So you need that direction to kind of get it off into the point where then you can effectively decentralize command and decision making to the crowd. Otherwise, it's just a complete non-starter, having everybody be the captain, and like it just doesn't work. So I think DAOs in their current stage were a bit of like the ICO mania of like DAOs, like throw a DAO on it, let's decentralize, let's make this thing a DAO because it's so much better. And yeah, like Joe said, it's like the wild speculation allows for innovation that wouldn't have happened otherwise when people's pocketbooks are a little bit tighter. So it's net good for the ecosystem, but yeah, a bit frothy in like the let's DAO it sort of situation. So DAO 2.0, yeah, we'll see what that looks like, but I think like pumping the brakes before you go full DAO and decentralized control is definitely a key part that will enable DAO 2.0 to kind of come into fruition.
I mean, for anyone in this room who has been running a company for some time, and I'm old enough to have been running the company for 14 years. Our previous product, had 50 million users a day. But ultimately, somebody's going to be the first one, and is the same person who is the last one on Slack, right? Who's going to be working the weekends. Most likely are the guys at the top, grinding, and who are massively invested in the company. And the new guys, right? When you hire a new guy, you expect that guy to first of all, to be a good fit, right? For the culture and have the right attitude. And some of them will dedicate the same number of hours as you, but that will, you need to show that example, and hopefully will follow. That's how you create a culture. And whoever as well in this room who might have practiced sports at decent level, you also know what a team is, right? So not because you add DAO to the name of your football or soccer club, it means that it's going to work better. You still need, throw the hours, put the effort, do the work, and hopefully, just hopefully, it will work out, right?
Awesome, thank you. Is there any question from the audience?
Behind you.
Test. Hello. Yeah. So a question I have is, obviously a lot of people think about their own benefits in the short term when making decisions in a DAO. So how do you let people make decisions that are interesting for the long-term vision of the company instead of their own short-term gains in a DAO?
We probably won't spend too much time considering it's NFTs and DeFi. I think we've strayed from the course a bit. But yeah, the short-term thinking is like pervasive throughout the world these days. So that's the thing of like waiting to decentralize and decentralize control. Because earlier on, when you're centralized and you have that captain that has like the longer-term strategic thinking, that's like when it really, really makes sense to let the DAO off before you decentralize. So perhaps that helps it.
Thank you.
I would like to think about DAOs no different to a startup, right? So you have a mission, you have a vision, you have a hypothesis, but your job consists on throwing stuff to the wall until something sticks. That's why you need the extra grind, and you need the extra effort for over a period of time. Now, once you have that stuff that got stuck on the wall, you know what your target is, and you should really focus on that and go deeper, deeper, and deeper. The deeper you go, the less room to go left and right. Therefore, the guys coming right after you, they will have something sustainable to base on. That is why maybe they will do less innovation, but they will be more proactive and more effective. And with effectivity comes as well extra return. And as soon as you have that return, you don't want to mess around because you could break the model.
I think not all DAOs are equal. Some DAOs are meant to be short-term. Some DAOs are meant to be long-term. So it's all about, is your member interests aligned as you? If you're a short-term DAO, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with capitalism and speculation and making money. If as a DAO, as a founder, as a project, you're all about the short-term gains, find people like that, because they will give you strategies on how to take short-term gains. There's nothing wrong with it. And there's DAO that's about long-term. So it's all about gating. Like how do you let people in? Do you have an interview process? Do you have questions that you ask? Do you ban people if they're short-term thinking? That's different compared to what the DAO is all about. So I think it depends on what the DAO is about, and it's about identifying who the interest-aligned people that are similar to your goals.
Nice, thank you. We are already running out of time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time and listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.